Welcome everyone, Mac here. I hope you didn't miss me over the week off. I figured it was Thanksgiving. I would give myself a week to compose myself and really prepare a great topic for today's video, and I believe I have. But before we get started, click the notification button so you get every new video that's posted on this channel. Like, share, subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Get them over here so they can get some great movie goodness from yours truly. So this particular video is inspired by another YouTube channel. They're mainly video game focused. That would be Metal Jesus Rocks. They're based out of Seattle. And he frequently does hidden gem videos with his crew. And that means they take the different game systems and they find the games that people may not know as well but are still really good and worth playing. So I figured, why don't we do the same thing with movies? Because there are tons and tons of hidden gems out there when it comes to movies. And I figured I would bring some of my favorite to you today. Now, if this video takes off, I'll be more than happy to do more in the future, but today I picked a few different genres and I only picked 2 movies per genre just to keep it moving. I will be keeping track as we go with some text at the bottom here, and then I will also put all of the movies that I mentioned today in links down at the bottom straight to the Internet Movie Database so you can learn more and learn where you can stream them, where you can pick them up, and so on and so forth. So, without further ado, here are some hidden gems. So I organized this by genre, and the first genre that I have here is action. And the first movie that I'm going to talk about in the action genre is a movie called Executive Decision. Now this came out in the mid-90s. It stars Kurt Russell, John Leguizamo, and Steven Seagal. Now hold on a second. I know the Steven Seagal movies all kind of follow that formula, but this is very different. This actually takes place on an airplane, and it's this special forces infiltrate this airplane, and they have to take down these terrorists on this airplane. Now, I'm going from memory. I haven't seen this movie in a while, but there are 2 things that really stick out to me. First off, Kurt Russell is like the everyman's action hero, and he is going to come up later on this list again. But the second thing that really I appreciated about this movie, and I know it's going to sound a little bit weird, Steven Seagal dies in the first 15 minutes, and he's one of the top billed stars. I found that funny because this is when he was definitely at his peak, but he was definitely a supporting player, didn't have much to do in the movie, and then Kurt Russell kind of took over. So it's kind of a different take on the terrorist take over the airplane action film. Definitely not absolute 100% action. There's a lot of suspense and stuff like that in there as well, but it's a really well-made movie, so that's Executive Decision. My second action hidden gem is a movie from 2003, and it is entitled The Rundown, and this stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Stifler himself, Seann William Scott, and this is like a jungle adventure movie where The Rock is sent to bring Seann William Scott home to his father, I believe. And it's just a wild, over-the-top action movie. Also stars Christopher Walken in a scenery-chewing performance as the villain. Lots of fun moments, lots of great interaction between The Rock and Seann William Scott. There was a great martial arts thing in the middle of it where The Rock gets the crap kicked out of him. It's really funny, just a real good time. Definitely a turn-off-your-brain action film. Moving on, we're going to move on to the kids, family / animation hidden gems. Now, the 2 I've picked here are kind of pushing the kid limit because they're a little bit edgy, but they're both animated films. The first one I'm going to talk about is Tim Burton's Frankenweenie, and that came out in 2012, and it's a completely stop-motion animated film, and it's about this kid. His dog dies, and he brings his dog back. Very much like Frankenstein. And so the other funny thing is his friends also bring back their animals, and they all some of them grow into big kaiju. There's a poodle bat thing. The movie is really weird, but at the same time really, really touching and very heartwarming. And the cool thing is that Tim Burton shot the whole thing in black and white. So it's a black and white stop motion animated movie. Very reminiscent of the old Universal Studios monster movies. It's great, it's weird, it's funny, and I know my kids both love it. Now the second movie, I fell in love with this movie the minute I saw it, and it is entitled Paranorman, and it also came out in 2012. And it's also a stop motion animated movie. Seems like it was the year for it, but this is by the Laika Animation Studios. They're the ones behind Coraline and Kubo and the Two Strings. But Paranorman, people kind of push Paranorman aside because it has the basic plot of The Sixth Sense, where this kid can see ghosts. But the difference is that this is a kid's movie and it's funny. And once again, I haven't seen this film in a while, but I remember the ending being one of the most powerful and absolutely moving endings of a kid's film I've ever seen. Like, the actual situation itself was so intense, but so good. It's the kind of movie that's like, it's so good, it brings you to tears with just the absolute craft of it all. So Paranorman is a wonderful kids movie. But moving on to comedy. Now comedy, it's hard to pick a hidden gem when it comes to comedy because I find comedy very subjective. What I think is funny, 100,000 other people probably think is totally stupid. The first one I'm going to do is a very tasteless, low-brow comedy called Basketball. This stars Trey Parker and Matt Stone, and if you don't know who they are the masterminds behind South Park. Now, they're not here in South Park, they're here as themselves, and they're these two, like, loser kids, I should say loser kids, I should say, like, loser young adults, who make this game, it's a hybrid between basketball and baseball, and they become huge sports stars. Like I said, it's lowbrow, it's very tasteless, it's got a lot of really gross out jokes, but it is super funny. And those two, I think, were great in it. And I also think the sport itself of basketball is really innovative, the way they did it. It's really cool. And I remember we saw this in college, and my roommates and I were like, we should try to go play basketball because it was really fun. So give that one a shot. I know a lot of critics really trashed that one, but I thought it was quite enjoyable. My other hidden gem in comedies, and I prefer a lot of what we call dark comedy, which is, definitely a comedy, but kind of skews a little violent here, a little weird there. This movie is called Nurse Betty, and it came out in 2000. Stars Chris Rock, Morgan Freeman, Greg Kinnear, and Renee Zellweger. Now, Renee Zellweger, who is the title character, is obsessed with this soap opera. And at one point, her boyfriend, who is played by a real sleazy Aaron Eckhart in this movie, is tracked down by two hitmen, played by Morgan Freeman and Chris Rock. She sees him get killed and goes into a state of shock and then believes she's part of the soap opera and travels to California to try to find her love of her life, which is Greg Kinnear, who is an actor on the soap opera. And the whole time she's being pursued by Morgan Freeman and Chris Rock. And Morgan Freeman actually starts falling in love with her. Has some weird moments of violence. It's an odd movie, but man, if you're in for something different and you really want to see Chris Rock as something he doesn't usually do, and you want to see Morgan Freeman before he just started taking anything for a paycheck, and you want to see Renee Zellweger before the whole Bridget Jones thing blew up, I highly recommend Nurse Betty. It is a really original dark comedy. So now we're going to go into dramas. One of my favorite political dramas that I bring up a lot and very few people have heard of it is called The Contender. It's got a dynamite cast: Gary Oldman, Joan Allen, Jeff Bridges, Christian Slater. And it is about Joan Allen, who is a contender for vice president of the United States. Jeff Bridges plays the president in this movie. And some things surface about her past. And then Gary Oldman, as this sleazy senator, tries to use all this against her. If it sounds kind of like Of the Times, it is. It still really holds up. Every performance is absolutely amazing in this movie. This thing will grab you. It is my second drama, and even though this kind of skews more toward like a crime movie, I'm calling it a drama because it's another movie that's easily one of my favorites and people have never heard of, and it's called Out of Sight. And the thing that really bugs me is that it stars George Clooney and Jennifer Lopez. George Clooney was at the peak of his career, and Jennifer Lopez, people kind of, dismiss her as an actress, and she is great in this movie. So George Clooney plays like this guy that just escaped from prison, and he's trying to do seek revenge on the man that put him there, and the man that put him there is played by Albert Brooks, by the way. So it's him and his buddy, who's played by Ving Rhames. They're trying to get to Detroit to meet this guy, and then along the way they're getting held up by the villain, who's played by Don Cheadle. Jennifer Lopez, who plays an FBI agent, and Dennis Farina plays her dad. Oh my gosh. Steve Zahn plays this absolutely hilarious stoner guy. It is a twisty crime thriller. It was written by one of the greatest crime writers ever, Mr. Elmore Leonard. The film adaptation is just out of this world. It's so good. I really implore you to watch that movie, Out of Sight. It's great. Now we move into horror. And horror is tough to find because, again, much like comedy, horror is very much like your own thing. Because people like horror for all different reasons. I brought that up in in a previous video. But I picked two recent ones that I just flipped out over. Now, the first one is called Oculus. And this is directed by a guy named Mike Flanagan, who is really starting to become one of the best horror directors of the last few years. So it's about these two siblings that have been holding back a lot of childhood trauma, all because of this mirror that was in the house that they were growing up in. I don't want to give away anymore, but I'm going to tell you right now, the way the movie was constructed, written, and directed, the pacing of it is like breakneck, and it is awesome. The story is great. The actual scares are great. This was one that took a long time to get out of my head because I absolutely loved it. So keep your eye on Mike Flanagan, man. This guy is going to be a really awesome household name before you know it. My next horror hidden gem, it's definitely a horror movie, but it can also kind of be considered a dark comedy. It's Happy Death Day. Now, I know this is getting a sequel, and I know it may not be technically a hidden gem, but I know a lot of people did not see this. I really should push you guys to see this movie. It's about this girl, typical college girl, and it's her birthday, and she gets killed, and when she wakes up, it's the same day again. And she keeps repeating the same day, and basically because she has to figure out who killed her. Yes, it's Groundhog Day with a killer. And if that sounds up your alley, watch it. It's really good. The story is fun. There's really some funny moments once she figures out that she can do whatever she wants. Very much in the vein of Groundhog Day, but I highly recommend Happy Death Day. So now we're going to move on to musicals. I say hidden gems, but I also consider it as like movies that people kind of have pushed aside and forgotten about. And one of my favorite movie musicals of like the past 20 years that really gets ignored is Hairspray. And Hairspray stars a great cast again: John Travolta, Queen Latifah, Zac Efron. Like, it's a star-packed, and the music is infectious and wonderful, and the story is fun, and at the same time you get a great social commentary about civil rights in the 60s. It is just an absolute firecracker of a musical through the entire thing, again with Christopher Walken, and he's fantastic. So Hairspray is a musical. If you have not seen it, please go see it. It's fantastic. So my other musical on here, and this is actually the oldest movie I have out of all of the movies I'm talking about today. It is entitled Little Shop of Horrors. And yes, this was an off-Broadway musical based off of the Roger Corman horror movie from the 1960s about a man-eating plant. They made a musical about a man-eating plant, and the cool thing is they did it all in like the 60s styles music, doo-wop and soul music. Oh my gosh, it is absolutely a blast, and it stars some of the greatest stars of the 80s. Rick Moranis, John Candy, Steve Martin, Bill Murray. You will see a plant eat people in this movie, and it's wild. Not to mention the fact that Levi Stubbs, who was the lead singer of the Four Tops, provides the voice of the plant. Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so wild. And the puppeteering is all done by Jim Henson Company, and it is flawless. Before CGI, this is practical effects at its best. Little Shop of Horrors, absolutely fantastic. Now we'll move into science fiction and fantasy, and I got one from each. My first one is Stardust, and this is a movie based off of a Neil Gaiman book. If you know who Neil Gaiman is, he is an awesome, prolific fantasy writer. This book is essentially a star falls from the sky in the form of a girl. And this guy actually has to take this girl across this land. And on the way, they meet like this evil witch played by Michelle Pfeiffer. They meet an airship captain played by Robert De Niro, doing a role that is so unique. You will not believe that it's actually Robert De Niro playing this role. The main star, the star, I should say, Claire Danes. And then the male lead is played by Charlie Cox. You guys probably know him better as Matt Murdock or Daredevil on Netflix. So much fun. A little weird, but it's Neil Gaiman. Everything Neil Gaiman does is a little weird. Once you watch this movie, you will never look at Robert De Niro the same again. And Michelle Pfeiffer is just having the time of her life playing the villain. So Stardust, great movie. Oh, I also forgot to mention is directed by Matthew Vaughn. He's the director behind the Kingsman movies and X-Men First Class and Kick-Ass. So again, great movie, great director. Now from the science fiction end of things, the silly science fiction movie called Demolition Man from 1993, starring Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes, and a young Sandra Bullock. So this movie is essentially, I'm laughing just thinking about it because this thing is hilarious. Sylvester Stallone plays this super cop. Wesley Snipes plays this super villain. They destroy everything in like this almost apocalyptic 1996, I think is when it starts. And since they're such a danger to society, they both get cryogenically frozen and tucked away in this cryo prison. Flash forward like 50 or 60 years later, we're in this utopian society. Wesley Snipes gets accidentally unfrozen, escapes, and starts wreaking havoc all over. And Sylvester Stallone has to get unfrozen to go get him. It is as ridiculous as it sounds, but its view of the future is really, really funny and really creative. You got some great star-making roles from Sandra Bullock, and Dennis Leary even pops up in here, and he's great. This was like Sly's 90s renaissance, and this is really one of my favorite guilty pleasures. And Wesley Snipes sporting this blonde fro thing, it's great. So Demolition Man, check it out. To finish up today's Hidden Gems, I'm going to talk about some thrillers. Now, the first thriller is entitled Breakdown. Stars Kurt Russell. Again, I told you we're going to see Kurt Russell again. And this is about Kurt Russell and his wife. They're on a road trip. Car breaks down. Somebody comes to help him. Kurt Russell says he'll stay with the car. His wife says he'll go with these people. Wife disappears. And the whole movie is basically Kurt Russell trying to find his wife. It is so good. Kurt Russell carries this whole movie on his shoulders like a boss. It is exciting. It's got some great action beats. It is unbelievably suspenseful. Just a great, underrated, underseen film. Breakdown. Final one I'm going to talk about is actually, I believe it was Christopher Nolan's second or third film, and it is entitled Insomnia. Now, it's a remake, and it's a thriller, and it stars Al Pacino and Robin Williams. And Robin Williams actually plays the heavy in this movie, plays the bad guy. And it is about Al Pacino going to track down Robin Williams, but the gimmick is that he has to go to Alaska, where now there's like constant daylight, and Al Pacino's character suffers from insomnia. So there's a lot of great directing tricks. There's unbelievable suspense, and Robin Williams is just dynamite in this movie as the villain. One of Al Pacino's last great performances. So if you can seek out Insomnia, please do. It's a real cracker. So that kind of wraps up the Hidden Gems. Like I said, I would be more than happy to do another one of these episodes because this was so much fun to research and so much fun to put together because I ran across literally dozens of other movies that I could easily put on this list. If you think I missed any initially in any of these genres, please put that in the comments. If you have one that just comes, pops into your head, put it down in the comments. Like I say to you guys all the time, I love reading your comments. Please do. So that wraps it up. Again, every movie that I talked about is in the description. Links to IMDb so you can learn more about it if you want. And of course, once again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. But until next time, this is Mac saying I'm out.